What has been painful to see is the Middle East, one of the most complicated regions in the world, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one of the most complicated conflicts in the most complicated region in the world. People are saying, oh, it's all their fault. They're to blame. Me, I've learned to trust the person who says, hey, I'm really confused.
Welcome to What Came After. I'm your host, Manya Marcus. On What Came After, we'll take a look at the many ways people's lives have changed since the brutal massacre in Israel on October 7th, 2023. We'll be speaking to people around the world to learn how this profound moment in Jewish and global history continues to shift, shape, and change them. To learn more, please visit us at whatcameafter.com. It is September 5th, 2025, and I'm seated here with Benjy Rogers. Benjy, thank you so much for meeting us. I know it was a bit of a schlep, but I'm so glad you're here. Can you tell me who you are and what you do?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Benjy Rogers. I work for the American Jewish Committee as our director for Middle East initiatives. What that means is I spend a lot of time trying to find ways to promote, advance, engage new ways for Arabs and Israelis to come together. As an organization, following October 7th, we kind of were at a standstill. AJC has been engaging in the Middle East for 50 plus years. We started in Morocco, started in North Africa, first focusing on ways to promote and protect the Jewish communities, and then very much, as you got into the 70s, looking for ways to promote Israeli-Arab engagement. And in following October 7th, it essentially got to the point, hey, is this vision of Israeli-Arab cooperation still possible? And ultimately, what we decided is, while there are huge challenges, and I don't want to understate how difficult this moment is, it's enormous. But when you shake everything up, by definition, there's also new opportunities. So we created something called the Center for a New Middle East at AJC, which essentially said, post-October 7th, we're going to focus on diplomatic engagement, which has been our bread and butter. We're also going to focus more and more on civil society engagement. We've done it for a while, but we were going to now invest more attention to it. And then something new for us, be a driver for understanding and cooperation.
So just before the interview, we talked a little bit about your professional background, and you did mention that you have worked for an organization people might be familiar with called the United Nations.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a lot of rancor and confusion maybe about the UN and the Jewish community right now. Can you tell us about your experience at the UN, what you did there, and how it might inform what you're doing now?
It was 10 years ago, and it was a short internship just after graduate school where I went to Tel Aviv University. I was working for their Bureau for Crisis Prevention and Recovery, which no longer exists. But it was looking, hey, how do you stabilize countries post-conflict? How do you build confidence in institutions? So it was a great learning experience. It was great people that I got to work with. But ultimately, I decided I wanted to focus my attention in other places. I thought as an American, there was a lot more in Washington that could also be done, a lot more direct engagement with Middle East countries. And so the UN route, the idea of being able to bring people together is essential. It's good, not without complication. UNDP, and certainly some time there was not without complication. But my place, I think what I took from there, people want to be able to engage, but it's not always easy. Good intentions are not enough, I would say.
That's a helpful frame. You shared that you are 37. You're kind of at that cusp when people look at demographics around who considers themselves a Zionist and who does not. It's around 37, 40 that we see a real shift from I care deeply about Israel to ambivalence or sometimes antipathy. What drew you to being particularly interested in Israel and the region?
I am the product of a lot of programs in Israel. I did Alexander Muz High School in Israel. I've done Young Judea Year course. I've done a Masa Career Israel program. Actually, my wife is American, but I met her in Israel. Israel to me became not a country of talking points, but became a country where I had some of my most formative years. It became a very real place. I fell in love with the people and I fell in love with the region.
What can you say about falling in love with the region from within Israel?
So I started my understanding of the Middle East through a very Israel-centric place. I've always been curious. And so when someone says, hey, you can't go there, your instinct is, oh, I want to go there and I want to understand. I also went to Tel Aviv University for my master's degree. I started during the Arab Spring, graduated 2010. And all these things were happening in this area surrounding Israel, and I wanted to learn more about it. So while I was at grad school, I was also working for the Moshe Dayan Center, which is connected to Tel Aviv University.
What did they do at the Moshe Dayan Center?
A lot of study of the Middle East. very much what is the Arab view from Israel, understanding these countries. What are the changes taking place? And it was a lot of discussion on how are these countries, which we have known for so long, transforming before our eyes during the Arab Spring.
Have you been able to spend time in the region outside of Israel?
So one of the amazing things about my current job with AJC is that I travel quite a lot. So everywhere from Morocco to the Emirates, we've been able to travel, we've been able to engage, learning about the people, learning about the culture, learning about the politics. And what you learn when you're there is nothing is black and white. One of my frustrations with what is going on in the world right now is everyone wants to know, hey, who's good and who's bad, who's right and who's wrong. And that's not reflective of the world. It's not reflective of reality. And it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to be there and experience it directly. For the most part, you don't encounter evil people. Certainly they exist, and certainly I've experienced it. But for the most people that you meet when you travel, these are people who have concerns just like everybody else. And that has been one of the more enlightening, simple messages, but one of the more enlightening messages that I've learned throughout my life. And maybe now one of the biggest disappointments that I have with the current state of affairs is that why do we feel such a deep need in one of the most complex, and there's beauty in complexity, there's frustration and there's anger, but why are we trying as a society to say, hey, it's all or nothing, it's them or us?
So I like to say when we're recording, because history seems to just be moving at this alarming clip right now, especially regionally. And I want to mention that I think it's the Emirates, the UAE, that just gave Israel, at least as reported in the press, this ultimatum that if they pursue annexation of the West Bank, diplomatic ties are going to be either weakened or eliminated. Do you feel that a moment like that, where a country that you've worked in and built ties within exercises some kind of influence over Israeli policy, does that feel like a win in the work that you do?
When the Emirates, when Lana Nusseibeh came out and say, hey, this is essentially annexation is a red line for
Red
us.
line, yeah.
The wins are the Abraham Accords. When you have the signing ceremony on the White House, that is a win. When you're able to do programs and you're seeing Israelis and Arabs sit next to each other and cooperate, that is a win. That's the excitement. When you're in this current position between Israel and the Arab world, and a friend of Israel says, hey, this is really a red line for us, I take that as a warning and take that as a concern and take that as something that Israeli should really take seriously. There's been so much complexity post-October 7th. And for Israelis, when it comes to Palestinians and the Palestinian issue, this is one of the most sensitive things to talk about now, especially. But I think there needs to be some greater understanding of the impact of what annexation would mean for the Arab world, what annexation would mean for Israel's relations as a whole. This is an important discussion, and I think that the Emiratis were saying, hey, you need to start having this conversation.
Okay. But this is the kind of thing that comes on your docket when things like this happen. It's what you're attentive to in your work.
Correct. One of the articles I think that stood out for me the most in my career was another Emirati article from Yusuf al-Ataiba, when he wrote in Hebrew to the Israeli people just before the Abraham Accord saying, hey, choose engagement over annexation. It was a similar message 5 years ago. In fact, we're coming right up on the anniversary, 5th anniversary of the Abraham Accords. What was so powerful was here is a senior Emirati official reaching out directly to the Israeli people saying, you are not isolated. You have a choice to make. Engage us. It's a message that I think, particularly post-October 7th, Israelis would want to hear more and more of right now. Arab world, engage us in Hebrew. Let us know that we're not alone. Come, tell us what a better future can look like. Something I've been disappointed about. Post-October 7th, you essentially had two countries come out and say Hamas is bad. The Emirates being one, Bahrain being the other. You had an Arab League statement just a few weeks ago. For the first time, an Arab League said Hamas is bad. It's a pretty low bar. And if you're trying to say, hey, we need a more peaceful region, hey, Israel, there's a better way forward, if it took almost 2 years to say Hamas bad, that's an issue.
You know, it's interesting. You're right. It is a low bar and it is an issue. But I remember when I saw that, I felt actually more optimism than I had in a while. I don't know if you have anything to say about those of us who saw it and thought, wow, this is a moment.
It was something that we as AJC welcomed because this is important. It is important to say that.
Can you describe what we're talking about just in case people aren't familiar?
Absolutely. So over the summer, there was a conference organized by France and Saudi Arabia about the two-state solution. This was a conference that many within the pro-Israel community weren't ecstatic about. Certainly, the Israeli government was not so ecstatic about it. However, there was a statement that was made at the conclusion of the conference where several countries signed on, including the Arab League, which is not a country, but a body representing the Arab world. And in that statement, it said Hamas is bad. That mentioned Hamas by name, which is not something that has happened since October 7th. The majority of the Arab world has not been able to come out and say, hey, Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas will not have a future in whatever comes next. And I think so much of what post-October 7th world has been is what is the future of security? What is the future of stability? What is the future of the region? From the Israeli perspective, it's very hard to engage in that future if there's not a clear understanding that a terrorist organization should not be representative. We hear this when we travel to the Arab world. We hear this all the time in private. We do not like Hamas. Hamas is bad for the Arab world. Hamas is bad for us. But we never hear it up until that point, a couple of weeks ago. We had not heard it in public in the way that it should. So all this long-winded talking is to say is that countries will find people are going to be far more responsive if they can actually talk to one another. Can there be an op-ed in Hebrew by Arab leaders saying, hey, Israel, we are at a pivotal point. You're talking about annexation. From our standpoint, that does not have a future, but this does. Here's the alternative vision. I think that would get a lot of attention.
When we talk about this, I find myself it feels so pleasant to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, right? On this level versus what's happening domestically. It feels like the ability to capture nuance, to have private conversations with people, to identify that there aren't just two sides of any issue feels idyllic and like, oh, how can we get there? How have you kept your personal focus in this arena as in America we have just seen this total eruption of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism? It's very complex what's happening here, and it's very difficult to live through. How have you maintained your focus on what you do when you live in this environment?
It's been extremely difficult. This is an extremely difficult time to be Jewish. Focus has been what is the root cause of this. And I think extremism, polarization, hyperpartisanship. What I've been trying to do, what we as AJC have been trying to do is recapture that center, recapture moderate ideals. You have to be able to work together. You have to be able to talk to each other. You have to understand the complexities. That's just the world we live in. And if you take an all or nothing approach, whether you take it from the right or whether you take it from the left, you are in an extreme. Whether you assign yourself the name progressive, whether you assign your name something else, but you are closed to other ideas, you're not moderate. You're not centrist. You're not thoughtful. It is quite easy to hate. It is quite easy to say, you know what? It's all their fault. They're all wrong. Here's the way forward. That's how social media works. That's how so much of this conversation has erupted. One person has something that sounds good. It just plays well. But it's not like people are flocking to social media, those people who say, hey, you know what? Actually, this is a really complicated issue. I want to sit down. I want to explain it. I want to explore all sides of it. And then let's make a decision together. That's not what gets the likes. That's not what gets the attention. And unfortunately, I think we've seen almost a spiral as time has gone on. What has been painful to see is the Middle East, one of the most complicated regions in the world, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one of the most complicated conflicts in the most complicated region in the world. People are saying, oh, it's all their fault. Mm-hmm. They're to blame. Me, I've learned to trust the person who says, hey, I'm really confused.
Again, for those in the back, confusion it's not a vulnerability. It's an asset right now, you think?
Absolutely.
Well, confusion is so linked to curiosity. And I think that's the gold.
So much of focusing on Israeli-Arab relations. I mean, if you would have told me a year ago, hey, there may be a real opportunity for Israel and Lebanon to come together in new ways, I would have said, you're crazy.
Right.
If you would have told me 5 years ago, hey, there's real opportunity for Israel and Saudi to get together, I would have said, I don't think so. It's not to say that there's not huge complications and that these things are certain. Absolutely not. But who would have thought that world events would have transpired in a way where you're having honest and real conversations about what the possibilities could be?
And it strikes me that since you travel, you know that most of these important conversations are happening face to face. Something that comes up a lot in these interviews is, when we talk about polarization, we always talk about social media. It's just part and parcel of the culture we're in. People talk about how we turned our lives online during COVID, and then it just created this atmosphere much too rich for vulnerability to extremism everywhere online. What was going on in terms of traction between other Arab countries and Israel?
I mean, look, during COVID is when you had the Abraham Accords signed. So clearly there was a lot of engagement.
What year were the Abraham Accords?
September 2020. So we're really coming up. 5th anniversary is on the 15th of September.
The height of COVID.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. When you talk about why the Abraham Accords, I think that's also quite important. There's lots of theories. To be respectful of what we just talked about, I don't think there is one reason, but I'll throw something to consider. This is a region, depending which countries you include, how you count, 480 million people. It's a big region. If you were to fly from Morocco to the Emirates, one side of the Middle East to the other, it's a 5-hour flight at least, maybe more actually. And we should understand that it's a diverse place. But out of those 480 million people, you're talking about 60% of the population that is under the age of 30. It is the second youngest region in the world. The World Bank classifies this region as the least economically integrated region in the world. You're talking about a region that is warming faster than most regions.
You mean from a climate change
From a climate perspective. Yeah. You're talking about a region that is quite food poor in some areas. Many of these countries import a lot of food. Water scarcity is a huge issue for all of these. I'm describing all these challenges, but if you're listening, you also see enormous opportunity. The idea is if you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to chance it. I'm going to go at it alone. Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck. There's huge opportunities to work together. There's a need to work together. If you're thinking, hey, you know what? Israel has a lot of technology and innovation that can be helpful in all these issues that I just mentioned. You're absolutely right. How do you capitalize on that? How do you showcase that as a good thing, as an important thing? That is what we are really striving for in a lot of the work that we do at AJC. And so when you talk about the Abraham Accords and why it happened, those issues aren't going away. Politics are not able to undermine those issues. No one has figured out a way to pick up their country and move it geographically to a different region.
Not yet.
And so there's got to be a way to say, okay, this is our reality. How do we work together? And that, I think, is the power of the Abraham Accords, because it says, okay, we're dedicated to that realization and we want to work together to achieve that.
You are making the choice to do this work from America. You have spent lots and lots of time in Israel, and yet it seems easier to have this discussion in the region and more difficult to have it here. Why have you chosen to make your life in the diaspora as opposed to Israel, where you spent these formative years and met your wife, etc.?
It's a great question. Obviously, I've thought about Aliyah in the past. Israel's a country I love. Israel's a country where I have friends and family, but my heart has always been in America. I'm an American Jew and very proud of that. I also think the U.S. has a huge ability to be impactful, especially right now. What can the U.S. administration do to help promote regional integration? When you look at the Abraham Accords, this was an American push initiative. There's a lot we can do from Washington. It's where I grew up, and I've always really loved being able to harness doing good from D.C.
I don't know if you remember, I think it was close to the beginning of the war, a movie came out that was trying to expose Zionism as a product of the indoctrination of American Jews in Jewish summer camps and similar programs. I'll say it was not to my taste. We'll leave it at that. When you talk about the fact that your love of Israel comes from so many programs that you've participated in, but then you also started to look outwards within the region, do you feel like that broader look that you decided to take at the Middle East was counter to the messaging that you were receiving in the university and at your programs, or was it part and parcel of what you were taught when you were in these various programs?
When I was a teenager and when I was early 20s, I was at the height of knowing everything there was to ever know about the world. Yes, there is, there's a lot of Hasbara in these programs.
Can you tell people what Hasbara is?
Hasbara, a lot of very Israel-centric, the miracle. This is the bigger idea, the dream of Israel. It's advocacy done in a very Israeli kind of look at the miracle that we are. For anyone who's read Exodus, it is that storytelling that is Hasbara. And there's a lot of pride in that. There's a lot of ideals that are transferred in that message. But when you're living someplace, you get to see all the good and all the bad. And to me, that's what makes a place interesting. That's how you learn to love a place. No one travels to any country saying, oh my gosh, everything is perfect here. Also, I don't know how interesting of a place
Pleasantville would be.
Yeah, right? That would be. I think we run into trouble when we idealize something. My interest in Israel was initially very cultural. historical. Also, I was 15 and someone said, "Hey, do you want to go to high school somewhere else?" And I said, "Great." It wasn't until I came back to college, which I did in the US, where I just started missing the country. And politics was actually a way to engage. Politics was a way for me to feel connected. I missed Israel when I was back in the US. So that's how I kind of became more engaged in the political dynamics.
We're told that young people are disaffected, that they're not interested in Israel, that they don't feel a connection, and that puts Israel in great jeopardy. How do you think that we can foster the kind of feeling that you have about Israel, where it's complex and rich, and there's love, but also disappointment, hope, momentum, ambition, all of these things? How do you think that we can engender that in people who are younger than we are?
People want to have the full story. I don't think anybody likes feeling like, hey, you are only telling me one side, because it creates this notion of, hey, I don't really know what's going on. I grew up, I can't say it was the most Zionist family. It was certainly a proudly Jewish family. But even in that, hey, you love Israel because you're Jewish. You're supposed to love Israel. I think in this day and age, the conversation needs to be deeper. My connection to Israel has been the people. My own personal experiences has been what this has meant for me. And I think people want real experiences. And when you idealize something and it's not the reality, if the position is you support Israel because you're Jewish, well, then if I'm an American Jew and I'm seeing a month ago you had 10% of the Israeli population come out and protest, well, that's interesting. I want to know about that. Tell me about that.
Right.
I think the way to reach audiences is just to be more honest on what is this place, what is the region. Again, there's beauty in the complexity of everything. In a world where people are saying, hey, they're all right and they're all wrong, if you can show somebody, hey, this is actually the reality, I think people are going to be naturally attracted to that.
I think there's a lot of passion and optimism in what you're saying. The work that you're doing right now, though, is surrounded by a lot of trauma. Can you tell us about your personal experience of October 7th?
I woke up to dozens of text messages from friends in Israel saying, hey, something's going on here. I looked at my phone and I ran downstairs and turned on the news. It was just pretty hard to believe, hard to make sense of. I felt lucky to work for AJC because as soon as I woke up, then the phone also started ringing from the AJC office. Okay, it's time to get to work. It's time to get into action. We've got many people who are Shomer Shabbos, so it's kind of all hands on deck. People who are working, let's do what we can do. But as the stories came out, as you learn more and more, it just kept getting more horrific, more heartbreaking. That was from a position of safety from Washington, D.C. Things started getting more complicated when you started hearing statements come out, even before there was an Israeli retaliation about anti-Israel rhetoric. And that was hard to understand. And then statements started coming out from organizations that had nothing to do with the Middle East. U.S. domestic organizations saying, oh, we have to speak out about Gaza. And then things became even more complicated. Stories started to emerge that were essentially equating the Israeli government on the same moral plane as Hamas. And you just stopped and said, what the hell is going on here? We remember anti-Semitism was ticking up in this country prior to October 7th. But I think there was trust that the institutions would keep it at bay. One of the more disappointing things that I saw came particularly from the academic world, where the people entrusted with knowledge made the same mistake. Hey, it's all their fault. I work for an Israel advocacy organization. I work for a pro-Israel organization proudly. And if you engage me, I'm going to have an honest conversation with you about how complex everything is. How were some of the most thoughtful U.S. academic institutions, some of the best in the world, saying, oh, it's all their fault? Mm-hmm. Or I don't really care about this issue. Let these people make their noise. The infamous hearing on Capitol Hill, where people gave answers, hey, is calling for the hatred of Jews bad? And they couldn't say yes. That stuck with the American Jewish community. So much of the American Jewish history, we're a nonpartisan organization, I want to be clear about that, but so much of American Jewish history lies in the left. And it felt like we were being purged just for being Jewish.
Did it come to you personally? Did you feel friendships disintegrating or faces closing to you?
I never really had terrible conversations. I never lost any friendships over that. Certainly there's some people who kept quiet, but I was lucky in that sense. But certainly I became more internal. I became much more invested in the Jewish community. My wife and I joined a synagogue. It became much more important to us, our Jewish identity, and we relied much more on ourselves. We do not talk about Israel publicly. My wife gets very uncomfortable if we're talking about it in public spaces. For safety, and also there are many things that identify me, and I don't need to be getting in shouting matches with people every 3 seconds. Most of the time I wear my suits to hostage pin, which how can the issue of hostages be controversial? But I think twice sometimes when I go into public places. So what am I doing? I'm not only concerned about me personally, but the impact that if something, God forbid, happens, would have in my family.
So I want to pivot because I think you, more than many, understand the stakes here: bodily safety, bodily harm. It was the AJC that put on the event when Sarah Milgrim and Yaron Lischinsky were murdered. You had involvement in that. Can you speak about it?
So for 25 plus years, AJC has been doing its Young Diplomats reception. And the reception celebrates the ingenuity of young people, the passion of young people. And so in May, we put on a Young Diplomats reception, and we have something within AJC called Access, which is our young leadership arm. And our Access director in DC comes to me and says, Benjy, we want to do a discussion on humanitarian aid, humanitarian diplomacy. Would you moderate it? My reaction is, you could not have picked a more controversial topic at this time to be able to discuss. This makes me very nervous, but I'm also proud that you want to be able to tackle this issue firsthand. So we did the program. The program was on humanitarian diplomacy. And we brought somebody from Israel Aid. We brought somebody from an organization that focuses on interfaith engagement to talk about their experience in humanitarian aid in Gaza. And we focused very much on the human stories. What is possible? How did people come together in order to cooperate to help those in need? We invited dozens of diplomats to this conversation. We had about 100 people in the room, all young Israelis, Arabs, Europeans, you name it, were in that room. And we all came around this idea of humanitarian diplomacy. How can we come together? How can we work together to find a better future? I'm prefacing that because hours later, the antithesis of that happened, which was, again, extremism at its worst. Israel bad, Jews bad. And ultimately, after the event, everyone was hanging out, everybody was talking. It was a very energetic environment. Sarah, I did not know that well, but Yaron was somebody who I worked with for years. He was a close friend, a contact of mine, somebody I was always happy to see, someone who always had this quiet confidence to him. He always had this very warm smile on his face. And I got to spend a lot of time with him that night. He was saying how excited he was to be able to go home to Israel for the holidays, to see his family. It's been about a year. And we all have moments in life where we're like, oh, everything's good right now. And Yaron seemed like he was in that place. And we were talking. I was introducing him to different people at the event. And at 8:55, I gave him a hug, ran out, jumped right into my Uber, which I was late getting into. And then when I was on my way home, I started getting the calls. Hey, what's going on? Does anyone know where Yaron is? Do you have any information? And that's when things just started to spiral. In the immediate aftermath, it just felt surreal. This is somebody who I just hugged goodbye. What do you mean they're not here anymore? How does this happen at an event where we were talking about coming together,
Humanitarian.
humanity? How does this inhumanity happen? And then you learn more about your own things that I did not know. You've learned more about Sarah and just what amazing people these are. And it always seems like it happens to the best of us.
Can you share a little bit about the things you learned about both of them? Because
So I did not know that Yaron and Sarah were dating, and I did not know that they were about to get engaged. That story, when that came out, and it came out immediately, was just like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And Sarah was, you hear all the ambition that she dedicated herself to coexistence, dedicated herself to finding a way forward. And Yaron was always the Israeli diplomat that was in the room when there were other Arab diplomats that Israel did not have relations with. And it was like, hey, you guys want to meet Yaron? And he was always there and always smiling. He was just good people.
you were in a difficult position, not just because of your own grief, but also because in your role at AJC, it sounds like people were looking to you to understand what to do professionally and how to process.
I don't know about that, but certainly everyone in the AJC family was thinking about our colleagues in Washington and then thinking about our colleagues in Kansas City too, where Sarah was from. I was not able to make it to Yaron's funeral, but I did go to Sarah's funeral. Just, it's heartbreak. There's no other word for it, and there's no way to make sense of it. And a lot of questioning, hey, what comes next? How do I honor their memory? How do I try to make this less painful? And again, no good answers, but these were not vengeful people. These were not angry people. These were people who wanted to do good in their life. And so how can you continue to do good in their memory? I don't think either one of them want to be symbols, something bigger than they were. I think you just remember that these were two people who loved each other and two people who were trying to do good and were murdered at an event that was celebrating coming together.
I heard from one of your colleagues that for reasons that were partially logistical, but emotionally driven, people didn't come back to the office for a few weeks after this event. Do you remember what it was like to try to get back to work after this?
Everybody processed it differently. There were some people who were grateful to get back to work because it kept them busy. And there are some people who still have a really hard time focusing. There'd just be days that were tough and days that I couldn't be focused. And there were other days where I was more driven to try to do something.
When you talk about the tough days, are you speaking only about sadness and grief or also about fear to continue working in these spaces that are so vulnerable right now?
I didn't experience much fear, but colleagues certainly did. What I experienced more was just disbelief and sadness. It's just a surreal experience. I did experience some anger in the sense that I remember driving past a synagogue on Shabbat. And like any synagogue you drive past in the US on Shabbat, there's police outside. And I remember being especially angry, grateful that there's protection, grateful that people are protecting these sites, but angry that it needs it. And then I remember I was speaking at a lot of events following their murder. And here and there'd be an incident. Someone strange would approach, small things, not major things. And I remember it would bother me more and more that this was something that is now part and parcel of reality. I was angry that there was outrage when you have all types of hate, but somehow when it's done to the Jews, this felt a little justified. That is something that I am still grappling with.
The anger?
The anger comes and goes. I think it's more the reality that this is not the world that any of us want right now. We should be able to do better. When I say Yaron and Sarah are the best of us, the thinking was, hey, they did better. We should do better. We should live up to that. We, the collective global society, and it seems like we're failing right now. And I think that's maybe where some of the anger comes from.
It strikes me that you're probably a person when you have a difficult experience, the way that you climb out of it is just to get back to work. Is that one of the ways that you process?
It was one of the ways that I processed, certainly. But I talked to people, I talked to friends. AJC was great about making sure everyone had professional help to talk to, spoke to my family, my wife, and it's an ongoing process.
It's the Center for the New Middle East. Is that what this is called?
AJC Center for a New Middle East.
AJC Center for a New Middle East. When did it officially launch and what was the proximity to this event?
So we announced it at our annual conference, at our global forum in 2024, but things really got underway not till February 2025 when we came out with the action plan, when we had a big event in Washington. We had Steve Witkoff come and speak, share his vision for the future, share what we hope will be the next steps in terms of Israeli-Arab integration, cooperation. And it's been really this call to action on coming together at times of great difficulty. Where are there new opportunities amongst the challenges?
I ask this because on the website, it talks about how the AJC made the decision to double down on the work that it had done in the aftermath of October 7th and really push for a better integration Arab-Israeli in the Middle East. But it also strikes me that you continued the work after these murders. It's still a nascent project, what you're doing right now. Did you ever have a feeling of, okay, I need to put this to bed for a moment. This can't happen right now. It's not the time.
I never had that feeling. One of the most rewarding things about my job is you can see the potential. You see the opportunity. The people who are on the extremes, which unfortunately I think is growing, try to present a reality that is anything but true. Hey, let's just pretend like the Jews don't exist, or let's pretend the Jews are all evil, or hey, let's pretend like the Palestinians don't exist. These are not realistic views. And when you've been in rooms with all different people, all different types of Israelis, Arabs, Palestinians, you don't have the luxury to say, oh, these people are bad, or these are liars, or take them out of the fold. You don't have that luxury. And when you see so much hate going on around the world, I just never said, okay, let's stop this. I've been tired. I've been exhausted. I've been angry. But if you're trying to hold the center, you feel like you're fighting 15 different battles at once.
Has it been more challenging to find new partnerships, to network?
Yes. The political situation has made getting partners harder. I don't think it has stopped people wanting to engage. It's not that the desire is gone, it's that it's just more difficult. So how do you get more innovative? How do you get more thoughtful? This work should be hard. If it was easy, we wouldn't be in this situation. You have to get creative. You have to get thoughtful. And I think one of the things that AJC has is just the understanding. It's built trust with all sorts of people over the years. We found a way to agree. We found a way to disagree. We've got a unique architecture. We've got offices all around the US. We've got offices overseas. We've got a platform to bring people together. And so, yes, things get hard. Well, maybe each program you do is more impactful.
I don't think you feel defeated. Maybe you do.
I don't feel defeated. I feel sad at times. I feel optimistic at times. I feel energetic at times, particularly when you talk about Sarah and Yaron. Certainly, sadness is a prevalent thought. Part of what it means to be a Jew, an American Jew in 2025, what it means to be a Zionist in 2025 is that you're going to have to deal with these difficult issues. And there's no one way. But the best way to deal with that is by trying to bring people together, trying to create understanding. I grew up in a diverse world, and I think that stayed with me. I've had friends of all backgrounds, of all faiths. I've learned that there is nothing innate, nothing in our DNA that stops Muslims and Jews from coming together, from Arabs and Israelis from coming together. This is not the will of God saying you must engage in conflict. So you have to build understanding. You have to find ways, create programs that you can scale. Any individual can come together. That's the easy part. Communities is the difficult part. And so how do you engage in that?
You mean our identities in community are a little less malleable? I think everybody feels a little bit of despair right now. You just offered some hope, everything you just said. Is there any parting thought that you would give for people who are just looking at this and feeling despondent? They don't know how this can improve.
Coming up on the 5th anniversary of the Abraham Accords, I think it has taught us in the Middle East, sometimes expect the unexpected. Nobody thought this would be possible. Nobody thought Israel, Bahrain, UAE, later on Morocco would be able to come together in the way that they did. Does that solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Not right now. Is this the end of the story? No. Can greater engagement happen? Can greater cooperation happen? Yes, because it needs to. It's in everyone's best interest that we find a way to figure this out. And it's not the extremists that have the solutions. It is the thoughtful, moderate people who want to actually know what the reality is and address what's going to happen. You're not going to get anywhere by saying, hey, if only my very narrow reality were true, then we could do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's who the extremes talk to. This is hard work. And if you see everyone as evil on one side or the other, you're not helping.
I want to really thank you for the time that you've given us today. It's been a really important conversation. Thank you so much for making your way out here.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to What Came After wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us online at whatcameafter.com.
chesed yibaneh. Yaranai, nai, nai, ananai, nai. Make a promise with me. I will build this world from love. Yaranai, nai, nai, ananai, nai. You must build this world. You must build this world from love. Yaranai, nai, nai, ananai, nai. And if we build this world from love, yaranai, nai, nai, ananai, nai, then God will build this world from love. Yaranai, nai, nai, ananai, nai. Olam chesed with all your heart. Olam chesed yibaneh. Yaranai, nai, nai, ananai, nai. 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 Yaranai, nai, nai, ananai, nai. Yaranai, nai, nai, ananai.